I'm Zoe at Scandi Notions, and today we're going to be workshopping the Thelma bag pattern. Thelma's a fantastic everyday bag, and as you can see, you can either make this in panels of all the same fabric, or you can use your favourite accent panels on the front and the back of the bag. As you can see, she is really roomy inside, and the pattern includes instructions on how to add a zipper pocket and a slip pocket. Right, so I've got all my exterior pattern pieces here. I've clipped them all together according to pattern piece. So we've got enough here, all the pieces to piece together the back and front panels. We've got a strap connector, tab connector and zipper panel. We have got the lining here we've got the gusset, the pockets and the lining main pieces. And we've also got the exterior gusset and the strap. Hardware wise, we've got 2 D-rings if you're going to use a strap with a swivel hook. Use these shapes. I'm not going to use those today. I'm going to use my rectangle rings because I'm going to attach my strap directly on to the bag. It's not going to be a removable one. Got my zipper tape. I've got 2 zipper pulls, one for the inside zipper pocket, one for the external zipper. I have a little handmade plate to go on the front. Let's see if I remember to attach that. And I've got instructions and a tab piece to attach, to make and attach a tab onto the end of the zipper. However, I've also got a little zip end which I might undo. I'll show you how to use the tab, might undo it and put on a zipper end. So I'm taking pattern piece 1C and I'm taking one of the pattern piece 1Bs, and I'm going to take the long straight edge of pattern piece 1B and place it along one of the side edges of pattern piece 1C. And when those edges are aligned, clip them in place and sew them together using a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then we can bring in and join the second piece. Bear in mind these are mirrored, so make sure you are putting them in correctly and not the wrong way around. We'll clip it in place and sew them together. Okay, then we're going to turn over from the wrong side and we're going to push our seams out to the sides. If you're using quilting cotton, you can give them a press. I'm not, I'm using vinyl, so I'm just going to give them a nice roll. Okay, so with those seams still pressed towards pattern piece B, towards the outsides, we're going to just top stitch on pattern piece B 1/8 of an inch or 3 mm to the side of that seam. Then we can bring in one of the main panel A's. So find the centre across the, well, go ahead and do the top and bottom of the main panel. And then we'll find the centre marks for the top and bottom of pattern piece 1A. Then we're going to right sides together, attach this piece to the top of the panel, and we're just going to align the centre seam, the centre marks, and clip them together. And then we're going to push the seam up towards the top panel, and again roller it from the wrong side or give it a press. Then we'll top stitch on the main panel along that seam. Okay, then make the second main panel in exactly the same way. Okay, both prepared, and I remembered to put on my little handmade sign there. Just beware, whatever you put on, that it's not in the way of any seam or top stitching that you're going to do using whatever foot you're using, and make sure that you've got the back nice and covered and it's out of the way of your stitch line later on. Okay, then we'll put all these aside, including the unprepared zipper panel. We'll come back to that. And we'll move on to preparing our gusset and our strap connectors. Right, so in the pattern, we've got quilting cotton or vinyl option for the strap connectors. If you're using quilting cotton, you might want to use a fabric glue pen for this, such as this one, and you will just go around the edge as you need it, as you fold it, as per the instructions. For the vinyl strap connectors, I'm going to use some double-sided tape. And I'm going to take off the backing as I go along. Okay, no need to put any across the top. Okay, so we're going to fold over the long edges first and make sure that the edge of that decaville is nice into the fold. And then we can fold the short edges. See that it just gathers into a little tuck there. That's fine, go with it. And then bring that last bit in and make sure that your points are nice and even. So it doesn't really matter how you do this bit, as long as you're happy with the result from the other side. And I'm all right with that. Now don't be tempted to sew this straight onto the gusset. We're going to make some markings on the gusset and on the strap connector first. Okay, so we're going to make a mark up from the bottom. You can find that in the pattern. Then we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch or 3mm from the edge all the way around just these three edges, starting and stopping at that line. Now I've started and stopped with long threads so that I can just pull the bobbin thread at the back and pull up gently in between. Let's see if I can get a good angle on this. There we go, you see the loop at the bottom there? Pull up the loop. Don't pull up the bobbin thread. We're pulling the front thread, the top thread, through to the back. And then we're going to tie these two ends together in a knot 2 or 3 times, and then it will be hidden from the front. Make sure to get the knot nice and tight at the back so that it's not a floppy stitch at the front, and do that on this side as well. Right, so I've made some marks on my exterior gusset piece. I've made some marks at the top edge, which is the shortest edge, and I've drawn a line down from the shortest edge. Right, so then I'm going to bring in my strap connector again and put some double-sided tape. If you're using quilting cotton, you can use some of the fabric glue pen, but only put it in the 2 inches or so that is at the bottom of your strap connector, and try and keep it out of the top stitching line that we're going to do in a second. Then with the bottom of the connector aligned with this line and the long piece of the strap connector, it's centered between the 2 marks at the top, press that down in place. And then we're going to, from this line that we made on the strap connector, we're going to sew through all layers with our top stitch, again 1/8 of an inch from the edge, starting and stopping where these stitch lines start and stop. And before I sew, I'm just putting in some little dots to mark out the points at which I'm going to pivot with my needle down to keep the shape of the connector. Okay, and then we're pulling the top thread through to the back again, tying some knots. Right, so now the strap connector is top stitched all the way around. I've made another mark on my strap connector, which is step 2E in the pattern. I'm going to put on my, I say D-ring, I'm using rectangle rings. Okay, and I'm going to slide that on as far as it will go before it hits the stitching that is attaching the strap connector to the gusset, and I'm going to pull that back out of my way. Then the line across the gusset across the strap connector, sorry, is going to line up with the top edge of the gusset. Line up this line, and then as close to the edge of the gusset as you can, we're going to baste that on and make sure that this strap connector end is in between these two lines along the short edge of the gusset. Like that. And you'll have a little lift in the strap connector there. Perfect. Okay, then that is that end finished. We're going to go to the other end and do that all over again on this end of the gusset. Okay, so now both strap connectors are in place and the D-rings also. We're just going to find the centre, make sure to line up the straight edges properly. It can be a bit tricky with the hardware on. And find the centre point of each side of the gusset. And now we're going to attach the main panel to the gusset. So we start right sides together at the bottom of the gusset. Centre marks aligned on both panels and start clipping together. And then at the top of the short end of the gusset and the top of the prepared main panel, we'll align the edges at that point and clip only part way down towards the corner. Plenty of clips, I find, helps with this. And to the other side, the top of the gusset, top of the main panel. Okay, when you've got the sides and the bottom clipped together, we're going to start working on the curves at the corners. So you'll notice that they look like they're not going to fit together. They don't sit together flat. So what we want to do is make some notches in the gusset piece. Don't make any notches in the main panel, it's not necessary. First of all, as a little check, just make sure that where you've got the centre is exactly the centre. So there should be roughly the same amount of tautness on each corner, and that's how you know everything's in line. So we'll take this corner first. I'm just going to make notches all the way around this curve, and then you'll see that it just spreads out so much more easily, and our stitch line is going to be nice and curved. There are no kinks in there, and that is how we're going to clip it, in that exact position. So when we come to sew it, we know that there shouldn't be any creases or puckers in that seam. All right, and then we move on to the next corner and we do exactly the same there. So now we're just going to sew top all the way around to the other side with our usual 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre seam allowance and a construction stitch of 2.5 millimetres. There we go. And if you want to, you can just turn this round to the right side so you can have a little look. And I'm quite happy with that. And also I'm checking my stitching to see whether I can see the threads or an excess of threads there, and I really can't. However, if you do, you can put in a line of shadow stitching, which is to say, where you have your line of stitching now, you can just put a line going parallel, a line of stitches going parallel all the way around, about 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters away from this original seam line. Okay, I can see I've gone a little bit wonky there. Let's have a look and see what that looks like on this side. Well, it doesn't look too bad, but I can see that it's sticking out a little here, so I'm just going to go over that. Yeah, and sure enough, that's the bit where we went a bit wrong. Okay, so I'm just going to go over that and correct the course a little. Okay, so I've corrected that now. Maybe I'll put a video together on how to sew a perfect curve, and I'll let you know when I've done it. So if you want to be notified when that drops, subscribe to the channel and you'll see it. Okay, so that's looking a lot better actually now on that corner. Perfect. Now we've done this side, I'm going to bring in the other main panel, my front panel with my sign on, and I'm going to attach the gusset to it. So exactly the same again. So if you want to turn it through the right way and just have a look at those curves, how it all sits together. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now I've turned my bag back inside out, I'm going to just trim about 1/8 of an inch all the way around those two seams that we've just sewn, and I'm going to leave about 1 inch, 1.5 inches untrimmed at all of the top edges. Right, so then we can put this to one side. Okay, so to prepare the lining, first of all, we'll start with one of the main lining panels, pattern piece 2, and one of the interior pocket panels, which is pattern piece 5. On both of them, we're going to find and mark the centre at the top and bottom. Make sure on your pocket piece that the longest edges are the top and bottom. Then using the measurements in the pattern, we're going to measure down from the top of the main lining panel and make a horizontal line. Then on the wrong side of the pocket piece, we're going to use the measurements in the pattern to measure make a first line at the top, and then down from that we'll use the second measurement to make a second line, which is parallel, and then we're going to measure in from the sides and make 2 vertical lines, one at each side. Then we're going to take the pocket panel, place it centrally on the main panel, right sides together, have the line on the main panel just along the top edge of the pocket panel. When you get to the ends of the rectangle, around this area here and this area here, just drop your stitch length slightly, and that will help to reduce the puckering that you can sometimes get when you make these welted pockets. Okay, remove this pin, and then we're going to make another line. We're going to make a line, you can use a ruler for this, but I'm just going to eyeball it, down the centre of the rectangle you just made, and stop about 3/8 of an inch, 6 millimeters from the end there. And then I'm going to draw a line that connects the corner of the box to the end of that line, and do that at all 4 corners. Then we're going to cut down the centre line. And when we get to the corner, to the end of the line, we cut along the diagonal line we've made. Now, you do need to get very close to the corner, but just take it thread by thread to start with. You can always cut a little bit more, you can't cut a little bit less after you've already cut it. Okay, so then we're going to take the pocket panel and push it through the hole that we just made. Okay, that's roughly it, and now I'm going to give it a nice press. So now I've cut my zipper tape to the measurement specified in step 4F of the pattern. I'm going to put on my zip pull now. I want to mention I will be making a video soon on how to put these pulls on. So if you want to be notified when that drops, make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. And now my tape's ready to go. So you might find it helpful before we go any further to put a little bar tack in the end. Keep it about 1/4 of an inch from the end of the zip, and all a bar tack is going backwards and forwards over the coil, and that will help your zip not fall off the end when you are working with it. And then I'm going to run some double-sided tape along the edges of both sides of the zip. Okay, remove the backing. Make sure that this is centred, roughly centred, but this hole needs to completely cover the zip. And we're just going to pop it on top of the zip. Make sure that the coil is running centrally along the opening here. Yes, that's fine. And this end, that's also fine. And I want to make sure that my pull comes through the window. Now I'm going to stitch along the edges of the opening 1/8 of an inch from the edge. When you come to the pull, have your needle down and foot up and shove that out of the way. If your machine has a problem going over the coil, you can hand crank over there. And if you're using a zip with metal teeth, woohoo, you best hand crank and be very careful. So we'll turn over to the wrong side of the main lining panel. You'll see the right side of the pocket lining, and we're going to fold up the bottom 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. I'm going to finger press that a little, and then I'm going to press or roll to hold that in place. And then I'm going to bring in the second pocket lining piece, and along the top and the bottom, remember they are the longest of the edges, along one of those I'm going to also fold a 3/8 of an inch seam. Then we're going to take the two pieces with the folds at the bottom, and we're going to match up. I'm going to match up the fold. So even though we've cut these two pieces exactly the same, the two pocket panel pieces, you're going to find that it always shifts because we've done a lot of sewing up here on the first panel. So that is going to shrink a little bit, so that the panel that we put on second is going to feel like it's a lot bigger. The sides won't have changed very much, so we'll line up the fold at the bottom and we'll line up the side edges. And then at the top edge, you're going to notice when you turn it over that the panel we've just clipped on is slightly bigger. So I'm going to trim along that so both of them are equal. And then we can clip along the top. I'm going to clip those folds at the bottom together so it remains folded. So what we're going to do now is stitch with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, 1 centimetre, all the way around the sides and the top. There we are, so all three sides closed and the bottom has a fold in it and remains open. So we can set this one aside for now. So now we've got the remaining pattern piece 2 main lining panel and both pattern piece 8, which is the slip pocket. To make the slip pocket, we're going to put both panels right sides together and match up all of the edges, clip it in place, and I'm going to draw a line about 2 inches in the seam allowance and central to the bottom edge. And I always like to put these little stop bars on because I always forget to start and stop sewing. So we'll start at this bar and finish at this one, going all the way around. And we will be using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for this, so about 6 millimeters. And when you've done that, we'll clip our corners and turn it in the right way. Poke out those corners, but not too far, otherwise they'll be funny angles. And then you can just put your fingers inside that hole at the ends of the stitch line and pull it slightly, and you'll see that this will naturally want to make a nice seam allowance there. Make sure the folded edges meet and clip that together, and I'm going to give it a nice press. So we've got a little opening at the bottom there, that's nice and pressed open, and then at the top edge only we're going to top stitch all the way across, and we'll do that 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. So now we can bring in the main panel again, and I've made a line using the measurements in the pattern in step 4K, but you can't really see it on here, so you'll just have to believe me that that's there. We've got our slip pocket panel and we're going to put it along this line, so with the top edge of the pocket along the line, and we're going to make sure that each side is equal. Okay, I've fixed mine in place with a couple of pins. Now we're going to sew from the top to the bottom, across the bottom to sew over this fold and close it, and up to the top, and we're going to leave this top bit unsewn, and we'll do that on the pocket panel 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Remove the pins, and there we are. So make sure that you've still got your halfway mark on the top and bottom of both lining panels, and we're going to just find and make the centre mark in the gusset piece. When you've done that, you can go ahead, I'll just put one of these aside for now, doesn't matter which, and you can go ahead and match the centre mark on the gusset, right sides together, match it with the centre mark on the lining panel. Now we're going to put some notches in, remember in the gusset only, not in the main lining panel. And we'll do it exactly the same as we did for the exterior gusset. Okay, and when you've got all that clipped in place, do the same again as you did for the exterior and start at the top end here, go all the way around and take it easy around those curves. And when you've attached both sides, you can again trim the seam allowance. Leave the top pieces, again, the parts of the seam allowance, leave those untrimmed. And then you can put the prepared lining aside. So I've brought in my zipper tape again, and I've cut it to the length specified in step 5 of the pattern. And we're going to start working on the zipper panel. Remember to subscribe if you want to see that video when it lands. Okay, so I've brought in pattern piece 10, the zipper tab, and I've folded over the long edges and pressed them over the interfacing. The next step, I want to be quite precise. I'm using quilting cotton here, and I'm going to just put some glue, some fabric glue pen, on the corners here, and I'm going to try and keep these corners really nice and neat and fold them inwards and press it down, just folding it over the interfacing there, and do the same at the other end as well. I'm going to fold the short edges together and set that with heat. Right, so we'll bring back in our zip, and not at the open end of the zip, so when it's open, and the closed end here. If you wanted to put a bar tack in, by the way, you can do, but just put it in the closed end, don't put it in the open end, because we're going to deal with that differently. And just put this zip tape in so it's all the way up to the fold it over, and we'll clip that together. Now you're going to top stitch from the folded edge towards the zipper tape, across the zipper tape, and back down to the folded edge. No need to stitch along there. Right, so I've made a mark, drawn a line across the zip tape 1 inch from the open end. And what we're going to do is just open it a little bit. I'm going to take this mark and I'm going to pinch it between my fingers, and you can see that this edge beyond that mark wants to curve around, and that's great. We're going to let it, and we're going to, that little bit that we pinched, that little fold that we pinched, we're going to snuggle that right up against the edge of the coil. I'm going to keep my finger there, hold it in place like that. Then I'm going to use my secret weapon, my stiletto, which I love. And I'm going to make a seam line. I'm just going to tack this down here, just baste it 1/8 of an inch in from this edge here. Just on that little bit for about 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch, just there. So the secret is put it under your presser foot and hold it with your finger, not in the line of the needle, obviously. Remove the clip and then put the stiletto underneath, not under your needle because you don't want to break it, and then just 1 stitch at a time. Okay, take the stiletto away but hold down the angled edge and sew it together, back again and down. And there it is, not too fiddly. And then we'll repeat it on the left side. There we go. And then we can put our prepared zipper aside for a minute and bring in 2 pattern piece 9s and the pressing mat again. We're going to, on the wrong side, make some marks. I've made some marks here. You'll find the measurements in step 5D in the pattern. And we'll just fold in the raw edge at the short end to the line and press it in place. We'll do that on all 4 of these short ends. And so you'll notice that I've put little marks on mine. This is because I'm using a directional fabric, and I just like to remind myself not to put it up the wrong way. So when we've made these folds at the ends of our pattern piece 9s, we can take out our zipper tape again, and I'm going to just lie this right sides up and have the folded edges unfolded, okay? So placing the zipper tape right sides together with the panel with the folded out ends. This coil is going to be just behind or level with the mark, the line on the wrong side. You can transfer the mark to the right side if it's helpful, and it is important that the long end of the tape of the zip there is aligned with the raw edge of pattern piece 9. So you can go ahead and clip that in place, and being careful not to stretch out the zipper tape, clip it in place at the other end, and then we can clip the rest of that in place as well. Right, so with those two clipped in place, we're going to start sewing. We're going to baste 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the tape and the zipper panel, and we're going to go from the coil, which is level with the mark on the wrong side, all the way across, and we're going to stop sewing at the fold. So the folded bit here, not the mark. So if you need to, just make a little mark on your zipper tape where that is, so it's easier to see from the top when it's underneath the presser foot. So placing the two panels right sides together, top at the top, so your directional fabric is running in the right direction, and we're going to sew these together with a construction stitch this time, 2.5mm stitch length. We're going to make sure that the folded edges of the two panels are aligned with each other, so you can go ahead and clip those in place now, and then clip the rest of it in place. So the two zipper panels are right sides together. The zipper is enclosed in that. This second panel we're working on, you'll see the wrong side of the zipper panel, zipper tape there. I'm going to start at the open end of the zip. And as we sewed from the line last time, we're actually going to sew from the fold. Still keep the folds open, but we're going to start there instead of back here this time. And we'll go all the way to the end, and we'll stop at the folds at the tab end, not the line, at the fold. And you might want to put a zipper foot on for this bit. And I'm going to open out the panels and pull the seam, fold the seam down towards me. We've got the zipper tape there, the teeth, the coil. I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit, and we can see that this lower panel has followed the seam allowance of the zip seam. So now I want to stick these two down because I want this nice and neat. And I'm going to set that with my iron. Okay, so once I've stuck this seam allowance down, I've opened out both seams, and then I'm folding them both. So then I'm going to fold the top over that fold. That gives us a nice little fold from the side then. Then we're going to clip that in place. Then at the tab end, we need to fold individually these pieces. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue pen on there. So the top one, fold over, and the top one, we fold over. And I can set that then with some heat, and then fold them so that they're wrong sides together, and the ends, folded ends, and the ends, the raw edges, all meet, and then clip it in place. Then we're going to baste this edge closed, and we're going to top stitch the other 3 edges. So to prepare the second half of the zipper panel, I've got my remaining zipper panel pieces, and I've made the marks, the same marks as we made in step 5D at the ends, and I pressed the ends over, but obviously keep them open for the next steps. And we're going to take the zipper panel and a zipper panel piece, and we're going to place them right sides together. Right side of the zip, right side of this panel. Just make sure that your directional fabric is the right way around. And we're going to again align the beginning of the coil with the line on the wrong side of the zip panel piece. So there we go. And you'll note that when you do that, the crease will also be aligned with the prepared half of the zipper panel short end. There we go. Have the panel open for this and just clip that together. And when you come to the tab end, you'll want the folded end to be level with the finished end of the first half of the zipper. And then we're going to baste the panel to the zipper tape. We're going to start at the coil, at the line on the wrong side, go all the way along, and we'll stop at the fold. And then with the wrong side of the zipper tape facing up, we're going to put the remaining zipper panel along that long edge, and it's going to be right sides together with the piece that you've just basted on. And the zipper tape will be sandwiched in between, and you're going to start by aligning the coil with the line on the wrong side of the fabric again. Clip that in place. When you get to the other end, you're going to make sure that at the tab end, the fold, the crease, is aligned with the fold of the previous part of the zipper panel. And then we're going to sew from the tab end, the crease at the tab end, start at the crease, go all the way along, and we're going to go all the way to the crease at the coil edge. And for this you'll be using a 3/8 of an inch or a centimetre seam allowance, and you might want to swap out to your zip foot. So to fold in the ends, we do the same as we did for the first coiled end, and we're just going to open out. So we've got the wrong size facing, and we're just going to push the zipper seam down, and that will give us a nice continuation of the seam at the bottom. So I'm just going to finger press that, and I've got my glue pen here again because I like it to be really neat at the ends. I'm just going to put a bit of glue on the wrong sides of the seam allowance there, push that down. I'm also going to put a bit of glue on the top of that and then open out the other side of the panel, and then I'm going to set that with my heat, a bit of heat from the iron, don't need much, and then I'm going to fold in the whole thing at the crease that we had in the top and bottom panels. And then we can fold right sides together, so the bottom edges of the raw edges actually meet, and clip that in place. Then we'll go to the other end, the tab end, and for both of these pieces then we just fold them over at the ends, at the creases rather, and then I'm just going to pull these together by putting the wrong sides of the zipper panels together and clip that in place, and then open out the whole thing, wrong sides together, clip along those raw edges, and then give it a nice press. And then, as we did for the other side, we can baste the raw edges closed and top stitch around the other 3 edges. And bringing in our exterior of the bag, we can open out our zipper panel, and we're going to match the centre marks on the zipper panels with the centre marks on the main panels of the bags. So you'll want the right side of the zip facing the right side of the fabric in your bag. Now, what I will say, it's a great time here, great opportunity to decide which way you want your bag to open. And with the centre marks in place, clip all the way along the raw edge of the zipper panel. And then baste the zipper panel in place. Then, without twisting the zip at the tab end, you're going to want to, with the right side of the zipper towards the right side of the exterior, place them together again using the centre markings and clip all the way along this side of the zipper panel. And then we'll do the same, baste the zipper panel to the exterior of the bag. And then we'll bring in our prepared lining and have the right sides facing out. Decide which side you want your zipper pocket to be on and which side you want the slip pocket to be on, and then pop it inside. And then you've still got your centre markings on the lining panel, so match those up to the centre marks on the exterior of the bag and clip it together at those notches, and then clip it together again at the notches on the other side. And then we'll have a look at the ends. Now, the ends, you're going to need to make sure that you tuck in the tab of your zip. It's going to be tucked in between, it's going to be sandwiched in between the lining and the exterior. Okay, also on the exterior, we're going to pull our hardware, our rectangle, all the way into that loop that we made on the strap connector, and push it down so that the strap connector is lying flat and straight along the edge, the raw edge of the gusset there. And then we'll align the seams at the gusset and clip the gusset parts together. You might want to open up these seams. Then we'll repeat that on this side. All right, and then we can clip the remaining pieces together. And then we'll sew all the way around using our normal stitch length, 2.5, and our normal seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. And when it comes to sewing over the strap connectors, do make sure that your hardware is right out of the way, and you might even want to change for swap out for a narrow foot here, which I think I will, and you can also use a zipper foot if you don't have one of those. Then we're going to reach inside, find our zipper pocket, the hole at the bottom of the zipper pocket, put your hand in all the way through the zipper and grab hold of the exterior of the bag at the bottom and pull it through the pocket. And then turn the whole bag the right way around. Push the lining back in. Reach into the zipper, pull the lining through, and put your fingers on each corner and just pull, and that will set quite a nice seam allowance there. So finger press that down. So you've got two options now for closing this seam. You can either top stitch along to close the seam about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, or you can have a look at my invisible stitch tutorial if you want more of a professional finish on your bag. So that's our lining finished, and now the last thing to do on the exterior of the bag is to top stitch along the main panel at the top here. I'm going to stitch about 1/4 of an inch in from the seam on mine because I prefer that over a 1/8 of an inch. If whatever you use, if you're worried about losing the guide here, just do a little line in chalk or something that's not going to leave a mark behind, or even put some washi tape across just to measure out the seam, the allowance that you're going to use here to keep it consistent around the whole bag. If you've got a flatbed machine, top tip, turn your bag inside out. So now we've done our top stitching, you will either have back stitched at the final and the first stitch, or you would have left long threads like me if you wanted to knot them off. If you've done back stitching, you can go ahead and close the bottom of your lining pocket now. You can skip ahead to that step. Or you can, if you have left long threads at the beginning and end of stitching, we can go to the lining and pull those through, as we have been doing all the way through this project. And then we have 4 strands of thread here, and I'm going to thread each of these 4 pieces through the lining panel, and so that they go in between the lining and the exterior of the bag. So I'm going to reach into that opening at the bottom of the pocket to help me do that. And then we've got our 4 pieces of thread here, 4 strands of thread, and we're just going to tie a knot in each pair. And now we can close the bottom of the pocket. And then your bag is ready for a nice strap. So when it comes to straps, you maybe want to piece a couple of pieces together to get a longer piece of textile for you to cut the strap from, especially if you're going to use it for a crossbody strap, for example. So I'm going to show you how to do it using these scrap pieces of fabric. Imagine that the blue splodges are the right side. I'm going to take one piece and place it on top of the other, right sides together, and I'm going to make it so that the top piece juts out just slightly over the top of the bottom piece, and the bottom piece just juts out slightly again at the side there. Then I'm going to take a marker. This is going to be on the wrong side, so it doesn't matter whether you will be able to erase it without leaving a mark or not. And I'm going to draw a diagonal line from top left to bottom right, and I'm going to just clip those ends in place, and then I'm going to stitch directly on top of this line and cut 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, snip off the top edges and at the side there, just so we keep that straight line going. And from the back we'll push down those seams, and then from the top side we will top stitch 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters to each side of that stitch line. Then when we've folded the strap, you'll see that the seams are in a different place to each other, so it's not going to be several layers in one place. We've spread them out. So I'm going to make my strap from vinyl today, but I just want to run through with you quickly instructions for quilting cotton. The pattern does include both instructions for a basic strap suggestion. So I've made some marks on both of my pieces, both vinyl and quilting cotton, according to step 7B. And I'm just going to fold, this is on the wrong sides the markings are made. I'm just going to fold the end, wrong sides together along that line so the raw edges are touching the marking I've made. I'm going to press that in place, and I'm going to do that at both ends. And then with those folds still in place, I'm going to fold wrong sides together again so the long raw edges meet, and I'm going to press that crease, open out, still with the wrong side facing, and then bring the long side raw edge into that crease and press again, and the same on the other raw edge. And then with those folded still, bring the folds together and just give that a really nice press, and then we'll top stitch all the way around all four sides. Okay, for vinyl it's more or less the same thing, we just hold it in place differently. So we've still got our marks at the end as we did with quilting cotton. I'm going to lie some double-sided tape along that within the seam allowance. Remove the backing and fold the end to the line, stick that down, and do the same at the other end. And I'm also going to place double-sided tape all the way along this line and fold the raw edge along the long edges to that line and stick it down onto the tape. And make sure that the fold at the end stays folded. Okay, and then when we've got everything clipped together, we're going to bring the two folded edges together and clip that in place. Then top stitch around all four edges, the same as you did with the quilting cotton. I like to back stitch on my straps, so I start at the shortest edge so that it's least noticeable. So in the pattern, the strap that's suggested also includes how to add a slider if you want to make it adjustable. I don't want to make my vinyl one adjustable. I've got it the perfect length, but I'm going to show you on my quilting cotton strap how to do that. So I've made marks on the ends of my strap on the underside as per step 8A. I'm going to pass one of the ends into the D-ring attached to the bag. Where that mark is, I'm just going to have the D-ring lying on there, and then I'm going to clip these two together and sew across the end here so that that is attached to the bag. So we've got one end attached, and without twisting the strap, we're going to pull this end through one side of the slider and down through the other side. And we're just going to pull a little bit up here, you'll see why in a minute. And then, still making sure we're not twisted up, we're going to pull the end of the strap through the remaining D-ring, and we're going to again pass this end through these holes in the slider. We're going to, it's quite important, pull it up through the right side and down through the left side. Near the end of the strap, the centre bar of the slider will be sitting on that. There it is, and we're going to just pull that through, and then we'll bring the undersides together again, and then we can either sew along the top stitching that we already made to join the two pieces of the strap together, or we can put a rivet in there. So that's how you do an adjustable strap. So to attach your strap directly onto the bag, I've made my mark across the underside of the strap. I just insert it onto the D-ring with the mark lying underneath the D-ring. And I'm going to set a rivet between the edge of my hardware and the edge of my strap. And there we go. Well, I hope you love your Thelma as much as I love mine. If you have any queries, pop them in the comments, get in touch via the website, scandinotions.com, tag me on all the socials with photos of your Thelma or any of the Scandinotions makes at Scandinotions.